for coming back. It is 1:03. We will reconvene the meeting and we will go into the regional transport connections.
Good afternoon, councillors. So in the main, the transport budgets have been adjusted to reflect the changes and the impacts of government funding decisions for our business. And there is a significant reduction in the scale of the programme for next year based on us matching, in the main, matching the government's subsidy approvals with the scale of our programme. So the original proposal to you is that we would reduce our programme to mirror the funding that we get from the Crown. Now, in the report, there are a list of what those changes are and the impacts of each of those on our total budgets for the next year's annual plan. That's really a summary of the first page. The second page is what has been incorporated within the plan. So first is that low cost, low risk programme, and the cost of the new services that were proposed within the long-term plan has come out, both from a rates perspective and also a fares revenue perspective, alongside that subsidy perspective. From conversations at the PT subcommittee, we have proposed an increase in revenue for bus back advertising, and there's a contract that will be going to market shortly. That revenue estimate comes from that in a pre-contractual space. Project on ride sharing wasn't approved, and we've removed all of the money from the budgets. There was an additional inflationary impact over the provisions in the LTP baseline budgets for bus services, and that's been included. And in total, our long-term plan numbers of 24.9 million reduced to 21.9 million in the annual plan. In addition to that, next slide please, Dave. At the December workshop, Council expressed an interest in increasing the Community Transport Fund. There is some information in the report on an option for that. At this stage, those dollars haven't been included in the annual plan, subject to your discussion and council approval. We have a separate report on regional rating, which has already been discussed this morning, a separate report on annual fares, and a separate report on local share funding for bus improvements, which the team here will take you through shortly. But before we get to that point, happy to answer any questions there might be on the general business for us as a directorate.
Any questions? Any bits people want to delve into? Nope. Nope.
Pass to the team.
Thanks, Phil, and thank you, Madam Chair and councillors. So if we go to the next slide, thanks, Dave. Today, as Phil mentioned, we're running through sort of 3 papers that we are seeking agreement from council on to go into the annual plan budget process. So the first of those is Regional Public Transport Rating Model, Public Transport Annual Fares Review, and the last one, of course, as Phil mentioned, is the use of funding to provide real-time screens for buses. So I'll flick into the next slide, Dave. So look, thanks for the opportunity today to have a conversation about public transport rating in the Waikato. I will take the report that was in the pack as read. The report's on page 104 in the pack. Just in terms of one thing I wanted to be really sort of clear about was that our current model for rating for public transport in the region is a fragmented model, and it is an impediment to the delivery of an improved and financially sustainable public transport offering across the region. We believe if we move to the model that we're talking about today, that this will provide council with a suitable funding system that enables the efficient collection of public transport rates across the region, ensuring fairness, transparency, and the ability to plan and implement an effective regional public transport network, which I think is critically important. Next slide, thanks, Dave. You'll see from this next slide here that this issue has had a long history at Waikato Regional Council, going back to November 2020, and then right up until July 2024, when Council made the decision as part of the long-term plan to rate region-wide for public transport and to defer consultation. I won't read the rest of that, just public transport. So, and that leads us to today, February 2025, where we're hoping to get preferred rating model options confirmed by Council for inclusion in the annual plan consultation. So as part of that process we've gone through, you'll be aware that we've had consultation with every territorial authority in the region. We've had 3 councillor workshops. We've had a public survey. I'll just jump to workshop 3. We just in the last one we had in December on this particular project. From that workshop, a number of things have occurred. Obviously, from the workshop, we had the indication that the weighted differential model was the preferred option of Council, as it was with all of the territorial authorities as well. We've moved away from the use of the 1,200 metres from a bus model to identify properties for targeted rates, instead using the DVR model. We've altered the map to make sure we don't split settlements across the region. And I think importantly, we've also gone through and we've rationalised the number of differentials that we had in the weighted differential option down to 5, being city, being central, both serviced and unserviced, and regional, again, serviced and unserviced. Since that workshop, we've been working hard on the model, and what you've seen in the report that we're talking about today is the outcome of all of that work. We've been working hard on refining the model to make sure that we actually do get what is a fair and equitable representation across the region of how we should rate for public transport moving forward. If you go to the next slide, thanks, Dave. Cutting to the chase with this, the recommendations that are contained in the report, we've got 2 there. The first one being is that the weighted distribution model and option 2 is the same as option 1, with the difference being the utilisation of capital value charge for Hamilton City only. And I guess that's where I'd probably like to leave the opening sort of framing up remarks. A lot of work's gone into this model. A lot of consultation. I do thank Council for their time in attending all of the territorial authority workshops that we had, and I think that was certainly valuable in getting across the message that this is a thing that Waikato Regional Council is taking seriously. Look, I'll leave it at that and open up the floor for questions and comments.
Great. I've got Councillor Nicol, Smith, Strange, and then Hughes. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you very much for the report and presentation. I can see that, again, it'll be so important in the consultation document to be as clear as we can. So I've got some feedback that I can give to you outside of this sometime. However, the thing I want to raise for the councillors to consider is, when having read this, I worry about putting all the focus on Hamilton City, despite the fact that there are 80% or so of buses in that area, very concentrated. I would propose that the options could be that we use the new model with a per property charge applied, either as a flat rate and option 2 as a CV, but you open that up to anywhere and everywhere in the region to have that opinion on whether they go CV or flat. We have come to this because of the feedback from the elected members in the districts, but some of those workshops were better attended, less attended. It is just the decision, I suppose. And because I'm going to check, we can see where submissions have come from, we can still break that down. If we want to end up with a 2 type of treating city differently and we don't, we can still end up in the same place, but I'd rather flat rate because everyone has equal access question to everybody. So I'm just putting that on the table to get feedback from everyone. Otherwise, you might get a very disjointed feedback from people outside of Hamilton, inside of Hamilton, about Hamilton. I don't want to make it all about Hamilton. Yeah. And I think there might be some positives if we were able to land on one system for the whole region and the rating. Otherwise, people will always ask, why is Hamilton different? What's the trigger as to why they were treated differently?
And as I understand it, the main reason they were treated differently is that was the feedback we specifically got from Hamilton City.
That's correct.
That was not this aligned with what all the other TAs said,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Councillor Smith.
Just on that very point, I understand from my colleagues that there are only 4 or 5 Hamilton City councillors there, so that's not a representative view in my point. So my a number of issues here. I've taken this out to people, and I was up in Te Kauwhara on Friday. The questions that I had were basically, where is that line, the green, the differential between the green and the blue? I think so. If we go out to consultation with this map, we need to have that delineated for the whole of the area, Waipa, Matamata, Waikato, so that they know which side of the line they're on, because we'll be asked anyway if we don't. Secondly, I've spent some time with people in Hamilton, asking them their views, and it was interesting. Unanimously, the people that fed back to me was that they wanted a flat rate and the same equity across the region. The basis of that is if the bus pulls up at the door in Harrowfield or in Poets Corner, they're getting on the same bus, getting the same service, and therefore they wanted equity, charged on an equitable basis, and so they didn't see any reason to differentiate from the rest of the region, and therefore I'd be supporting that we flip this, that option 1 is the identified council option, and option 2 would be the differential for Hamilton. But on the comparison from where we got to with our initial proposal 12 months ago, where we've landed, the feedback I've got from more than my own constituency is that council has done a hell of a lot better job this time round, and it's generally supported. Excuse me. So those 2 issues, better map and option 1 being the preferred option. Thank you.
Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the work that has been done on this model since the LTP. I think staff have led us through a really good process, and yeah, thank you to everyone around the table who's contributed to that focus and process as well. So yeah, I generally agree with what's been said already, that maybe the consultation question is, either or without separating out Hamilton. Yeah, acknowledging that when we did meet with them, it was, as been said, a small number of councillors from both councils. And I'd be really keen to hear from the community at large as well, whether they'd prefer a per property or a CV based charge. Yeah, my concern with would be within Hamilton, they're currently CV. So I'm just thinking of those lower value properties who they would face quite a big jump up. And at the other end as well, those who are currently CV and we go to a per property charge, they would have quite a large reduction. So just acknowledging we are in a cost of living crisis. And yeah, just want to make it simple for people out there to give us feedback on that one. Agree with Noel that the map, we don't want the map to trip us up. And people get caught up in, what side of the line am I on? So yeah, agree that map needs to be really soundproof this time. And I have a couple of thoughts about community transport, but I guess that's coming soon.
That's is that a separate one we're going to go through?
Oh, I covered that under the last item, but
Okay.
we can come back to it.
Yeah, just wanted to signal, yeah, whether we, that I'd like to consult with the community over increasing that fund. I know within RTC and Chair of RTC has mentioned it as well, that increasing that fund to a level that allows for, to reflect the need and those needs being met within the wider region. Acknowledging as well that sometimes overheads blow out that fund and yeah, so wanting to have a good amount of money to actually send out to people. So just signalling 500,000 per annum that we consult, and it's currently 300. So yeah, but keen to hear thoughts on that.
I'd go for a round number on that fund just to not complicate things. Just 2 cents.
Councillor Hughes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I haven't done the same sort of depth of research that my learned colleague on the other side of the table has, but I compliment him on that. And I agree with everything he said. I think we want to keep it simple. The old KISS principle works well for everyone. And certainly the message I've had from constituents that they want to see a flat rate. We all use the same service. Why shouldn't we pay the same? And pushing more towards user pays, a very strong message out there that they want to see more user pays. A lot of support for the government direction in terms of what they're doing there. As far as community transport is concerned, I'm sorry, Angela, but I can't support any increases there. So that's my lot. Thanks.
Any other comments? Oh, sorry. Councillor Nebo and then Councillor Marr.
Yeah, look, I tend to, I think if it goes out the way it is, it'll invite questions that will complicate it. I'm probably with Noel a bit that doing option 1 as everyone and then option 2 but as CV, but maybe word it the question in such a way that we can identify that, hey, there's a whole bunch of Hamilton people want CV rating it, if in fact they do. And look, I don't have a view either way, but on that one. And look, I'm quite open to an increase in the community transport budget. Yeah.
Did you want to respond, Phil?
Just got an update, really thinking about the options when the time's right, Chair. An option for you to consider would be to have option 1 and option 2 as stated, and then either between those two or as another option identified a CV for the whole region. So it's uniform, all uniform, or all uniform, all CV, or all uniform other than Hamilton that would take CV. That would allow the full range of feedback from the community.
The only thing is that that's not consistent with the feedback we got going around. There was only one council that expressed that they wanted CV. So I'd be reluctant to muddy that water. Yeah.
If I could add clarity to the reason I brought it up was because I felt that the weighted distribution model is one that all councillors that we talked to in those workshops were able to land on pretty much consensus. The CV, we just didn't get clear feedback. I felt we got a couple of people giving their opinion, but people found it quite a hard question to answer. And then sometimes they reverted back to, well, this is how we do it currently also. I just think it's a values-based question of whether you think PT is a thing that you pay for based on affordability or based on access, equality. And so we would get the best range of answers if we don't zero in on Hamilton as such by just leaving it open to the population. Yeah, so.
I think we could.
And I know we have to have options. And so I just want to get good answers. I feel like if we make it about Hamilton, we get a lot of anti-Hamilton, pro-Hamilton and other Hamilton discussion, which is important perhaps because it's 80% of the buses. But at the same time, are we actually getting the feedback we really want, which is
Janine, did you want to respond?
Yeah, so probably just to clarify, if option 2 is presented, doesn't go forward as a consultation option, but is something that it's how might you accommodate a mixed model if you haven't put something around that we remain open to a mixed model in your option analysis, because otherwise you are consulting on one or the other. You haven't got that middle ground to give you some what are we actually hearing based on feedback. That would be my only.
Considering the high value in Hamilton, that might be the reason why we add that third option, as Phil mentioned. And that gives us still maximum amount of flexibility of what to land on. Got it.
I just wonder, I like what you're suggesting, that it does, by having this, both options, it does give us flexibility depending on the feedback. I just wonder if we can tidy up the wording on option 2, because it feels weird, the weighted distribution model with capital values based, on Hamilton City only. And a lot of people will, that's what will jar them. And I think it would be, we could just reorder those words. And
Yeah, I think, and it will be in the rating impacts that are presented as part of the consultation document also. But I think within the story, noting that 80% of the cost and services actually fall within Hamilton City. So probably looks and feels a little bit different there than it might elsewhere in the region.
Again, important, we have the right narratives around these consultation items.
I'm just wondering, with the way we're talking about this, so you've got the city differential, you've got the serviced central one and the serviced regional one. They would be, in my mind, the only 3 that you would apply a CV process to, because the other 2 are unserviced ones, which is just a flat rate, if that makes sense. So you could then alter the wording here just to line up with those differentials potentially.
Yeah. I guess I what I'm hearing is that we want to maintain the flexibility so that we can get feedback and make a different decision should that be what the vast majority of people are saying. But we don't want the way we put this forward to be overly confusing and then create perhaps some tension between parts of our region and others. So, all right, I've got Councillor Marr, Councillor Mahuta, Councillor Downard, Dunbar, Smith, and Strange.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we're talking community transport, just to clarity, are we including total mobility, that community transport?
So total mobility doesn't get included in that community transport funding we're talking about. That's purely for community transport.
That was my question.
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's
It's not.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's right. It's not treated the same. No. Sorry.
Councillor Mahuta. Sorry, you're on mute. There we go.
Yeah. Sorry, it's my post-Christmas none of fingers. Thank you again for the work and the options that have been developed. I like other councillors would rather they be both put up, and it is the wording of option 2. I know that doesn't give you much guidance, but I think the discussion's been had. And I'm supportive of the community transport option and wondering to the future, we did such a great job, different example, but when we took up surf lifesaving regionally, and I just think if we had a different approach to community transport, like the social impact funding one with Trust Waikato, we might be able to develop the scope of that one so it's not so onerous on us alone. That's for future, but I'll just flag it now. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Downard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on to Jennifer's comments, I think it wasn't just TAs. I had meetings with community groups as well and boards, and the ultimate feeling, especially down in Rotorua and Taupo, was that they didn't want CV, and that was brought up. And obviously the Greater Wellington option C, I think out of all the workshops, and, I was the one that voted against this in the long-term plan because I think it needed to go out to be more consultated with the TAs, and I think the staff have gone out and done a great job on doing that and with the workshops. So I'm happy with what they've come back to us in this report with option 2. And I do hear you say that only 5 councillors turned up or voted on the Hamilton, but that's up to them. If it was a real concern for them, then all the councillors would have turned up and represented their ratepayers. So I think there's been a lot of work done on this. So that's why I'll be voting for option 2 as a preferred option. And also on the community transport, for me, a big buy-in to this Waikato Regional Council taking over the rateable for public transport was the community transport in areas of quite vast regional that is rural, and their benefit out of being rated for the good of public transport was being able to access the community transport fund. The only thing that I felt disappointed in, even in the report that came out, that it's, it shows 500,000, but it's actually only 300,000 because, 200,000. So I hope when it goes out to consultation that it shows exactly what money is going into that, rather than, the 500,000 mobility, which isn't what is, by the time you take overheads out. So.
Sorry, I'm just thinking, I just want to clarify in my mind, the 500,000, where is that in here?
That's in the report of the total costs equal 15.8 million.
Yeah, can you point me to a page?
I can't remember what page it's on. But.
Just want to make sure that is it 300, and I thought it was 300 and some 14,000 or something. What?
So this is a topic that has come up before, and it's been a conversation as part of the regional PT workshops that we have had, that the sum that we provide as an opportunity for community groups to bid for is lower than the total budget for that activity. And the reason for that is that budget includes staff time and some of the organisational burden costs.
Right. To go out and work with the community to develop these types of things, or?
Yes, absolutely, and to lead the approvals process and do the work. But the question has come up through these discussions that the number that we describe to the community as being the fund needs to be the fund as opposed to.
Yeah, what's available.
Yes.
To distribute.
Yes.
Needs to be clearly identified. Right. Got it. Right. So Dunbar Smith.
Thank you. I listened to what Angela was saying about the capital value charge for Hamilton City. If we went with the per property charge, you were indicating that many of the lower income areas might face really significant raises. So I think they're already going to be paying more in public transport in terms of the cost we've got there. So you'd be paying twice. I'm supportive of option 2 as our preferred option. I wonder though, was it being suggested there should also be a third option for the green area that was CV for central service? Is that what you were suggesting earlier?
I guess more to the point, what I was suggesting was that we shouldn't bother applying CV for the unserviced areas, both central and regionally, and that then basically leads to what you've just said. Mm-hmm. So for central and regional, for the serviced areas, would you opt for a CV, or have the option of a CV based rate? That's the question I was posing. Yes,
I agree. It probably is getting too complicated. So I'm happy with option 2, and supportive of community transport getting additional funding.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry.
That's right.
I've got Councillor Strange, Councillor Nicol, and then Councillor Smith.
I'm happy to go at the end.
Huh?
I'm happy to go after the list.
Oh, Jennifer.
Yeah, no, having listened to that, and I do now recall how complicated the tables get with CV. Thank you.
Hmm.
I've thought it through further, and those two options do give us all of the options that are likely to still fall, and so while keeping it simple. So I'm going to revert back to this is really good work, and my main objective today is to keep these public transport items in so that we can get feedback on them. And so for this one, I just brought up the topic before because I want to make sure the feedback is quality. And I think having listened to the conversation, and thanks everybody, we will get quality from these questions. So thank you.
I still think the wording on option 2 could be a little better. But that's just
While
me.
flipping the wording on
Yeah.
option 2. Yeah.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I come back to a point that I think has been made. Keep it simple. And the reality for me is introducing the third option about CVs for central and regional. The reality is with the differential, you've already achieved that and recognizing that. So let's not start introducing more, because the more we introduce, the more complicated, the more varied the feedback will be, and therefore we're left not knowing what we really want as a region. Keeping it simple, stick with what we've got. I still reiterate that I think flipping it to option 1 and treating the whole region equitably to start with, and then allowing for the submissions to come in and say, no, we want CV in Hamilton, because I don't want to end up with a situation where those in Hamilton say, well, we want what the region's got, and then the region saying, well,
We want
okay,
what Hamilton's got.
and so at the moment, remember, Hamilton is already paying a rate, and the work that I've done on it shows that whether it's the break point is about 1 to 1.1 million. And if you go with CV, they on the option 2, they certainly will be paying more and under that 1.1 million. There's a lot of houses in Hamilton that are rented, but they're already paying the rates in the rating that we already charge. And so in all the examples that I found, it was still higher on the current charges than what's proposed on either model, CV or the different weighted distribution model. So to me, I just want to see if we go equitably, that takes that discussion out and saying they've got that, I want it, etc. So I know, and I go back to the fact that there was only 5 councillors from Hamilton. If 5 councillors here were to be the sole judges and determiners of what was to happen in the region, I'd be very concerned. So I'd like to test it, that we go out equitably, and if they want change, they tell us what that is. So let's keep it simple. Let's not introduce any more options. I think the staff have done a fantastic amount of work and got a result that just leaves what happened 12 months ago for dead, and well done. So anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, really useful discussion and points. I'm just wondering, just picking up a few of Noel's points around what our preferred option is going out for consultation. So is it that we treat Hamilton differently, which is what it currently is, or do we prefer that we treat the whole region the same? So keen to hear.
So
Yes, but I think it's really important that we go out with what our preferred option is, while still giving 2 options.
So can we do a straw poll on those who would support option 1? So this is the weighted distribution on a per property charge across the entire region. So every territorial gets treated the same.
Madam Chair, could you
Yeah.
just clarify what the 2 or 3 options of straw poll are based on are? So then I'm.
Right, I
very-
just was looking at these two.
Oh,
I was
okay.
not
Oh, so it's no.
introducing any third thing. So,
Ah,
so
okay.
the two options are that everything is a per property rate across the
Yeah,
region,
yeah, yeah.
or that within Hamilton, it's a CV-based rate, but everywhere else in the region is a per property
Yeah, yeah,
rate.
yeah. No, I was just, when I want to understand them, I didn't
Yeah.
know you were based on this. I thought that third one, yeah. Okay. So
All right, so I'm just going to do that again. So those who support option 1, put your hand up. Was that a hand, Jennifer? Okay. I just wanted to, huh? Great. And to, okay, I just want, good, we have a good steer there. We also have the comment around increasing the allowance for community transport. And that certainly, I suppose, having gone to a number of the meetings with the TAs, particularly outside of the areas that are quite well serviced by buses already, that seemed to be their biggest focus is, you know, great, you want to take over this regional rating, all good with that, but we want some services that reflect the needs within our community. And our messaging was that community transport was the avenue to do that most effectively. So I certainly would support an increase in that space so that we can address the issues that our far-reaching communities have raised with us on a number of occasions. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
I'd
gonna
like to hear
do
from,
that.
because if we put a number in, we get to hear back from the Regional Transport Committee on our plan. We get to hear back from the Future Proof Public Transport Committee. We get to hear back from all the people.
All the TAs.
So if you put
Yeah.
a number and then you get the feedback on what that number should be, it would be really good
Mhm.
for us to make a decision in June.
No, it was 500 was what was,
Currently 300, proposed going to 5 based on what's in the report, which was
Yeah.
something like 130, 150 increase was in demand already. So it was oversubscribed last time at 300.
Mm.
Is that right, Mike? Yeah.
so those who support an increase in the community transport up to 500,000? Sweet, all right, clear. Nice, we've got a clear steer. What else?
So,
What else you got for us?
So the next paper then, if we could switch to the next slide, Dave, is on the annual fares review. So I'll hand to Trudy and Brian for that.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you, councillors. So as part of the Regional Public Transport Plan that we are looking to develop shortly, we'll include in there an annual fares review policy, which will see council considering the setting of PT fares on an annual basis. We recently increased fares by 20% at the start of this financial year. It was the first one that we'd done in some time, I understand. Which is a very lumpy way of going about this. And so, so that's an important piece to understand. So in terms of this paper that we've put forward today, we are talking or including in there a 6.4% increase to reflect increased operating costs for public transport. And that's consistent with what we were saying in the previous paper as well for 25-26. But in addition to that, we've also been in discussion with NZTA and having conversations about the central government's requirements for increasing private share over the next little while. And so we had some indications from NZTA recently, or late last year actually, where they were sort of indicating that the targets for us should be 16% for this current year, 20% for next year, 25, 26, and 27% for the year after. We've had some further conversations with NZTA about that because, I should say that the private share component does actually include other things other than just fare revenue. It includes busback advertising revenue. It includes Te Huia Cafe revenue and the like as well. So it's all sort of third-party revenue lumped into that. we've been looking at this. We've been modelling this impact on our public transport system in the Waikato. And you'll see in the paper there that we've come up with a variety of options for consideration. And the option that we think is probably the most pragmatic one in terms of the way forward is what we're calling option 3 in the paper. It does indicate that we are working with NZTA, that we are doing what we can to increase the level of private share that we collect. But it's not going as hard as NZTA had originally indicated. Our concern with that is that if you go really hard with those numbers, and that actually equates to a 38% and a 40% fare increase over years 2 and 3 in that 3-year time horizon, that is quite significant and will likely result in a reduction in patronage. And so therefore the private share then comes down even though you're raising the rates higher. So look, so we've, in this paper, we've put forward option 3 as being the preferred option. Just to note that this year, at the end of December, the December quarter, we were tracking favourably in terms of our fare revenue. And so what we're looking at in terms of that is the 6.4% increase plus a more moderate 5% increase for 25-26 due to the favourable performance in the current financial year, resulting in a total increase for this year of 11.4%. Just to note also that in that conversation, we are saying then a 10% year-on-year increase over about a 5 or so year horizon might be the way forward as well. This is a significant, I guess, demand, I think, on public transport in the Waikato. And I guess we want it to be seen to be doing the right thing in terms of trying to do what central government is wanting us to do, but taking that kind of middle ground, I suppose, which is a more of a pragmatic approach. But that's all I wanted to say. Trudy, I don't know if you had any further commentary you wanted to make around any of that. That's just a broad framing up, I guess, of the issues that we've got with this particular paper.
Oh, thank you, Brian. I think the only thing I'd like to add is our approach with the agency is to take that smoothed approach in terms of the targets so that it's not, you know, this sort of staged uplift that's possibly not achievable. So we're not saying we can't do it. We're saying we can do it, but perhaps over a longer time period, hence the paper today.
Yeah, Councillor Hughes, then Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Madam Chair. A couple of points. It's encouraging to hear that the fares, increases in fares being seen as a disincentive to use public transport. Have we done any sensitivity testing to see what level we can push those fares to before there is fall off in demand?
We did develop a model for the long-term plan that looked at a potential impact of a fares increase of 20%. That hasn't played out. However, the model remains, and I think we could continue to test against that to see that there's for every % increase, there was a % of impact on customers, and that would grow as it went up.
So Phil, are we going to test it or not? Like, the only way to test it is by doing it.
Which is what we've effectively done with the long-term plan.
I'm saying you might want to test it a bit further.
Government hasn't really given us that option in terms of its expectations were purely around revenue, and it doesn't acknowledge that impact. We could run these through the same model, and they.
The only model that works is real life. You know, what happens when you push the fares up by another 10%? Don't care about the computers.
Yeah.
They don't tell you that.
I suspect that these next increases will give us a fairly clear understanding of that fairly quickly.
Okay. So the second question I've got, and I keep hearing this about the cafe recovery on Te Huia. Somebody explain to me the model, and I'll just give you a scenario. So, because Robbie and I are thinking going to Auckland one day. I know what he's going to be like on the way home. So, say I pay $20 for my fare, right? That goes against a fixed cost for Te Huia. Then Robbie spends $150 in the cafe. Can you tell me what the variable cost is on that? How much of that is cost? And like, if we get charged an extra $100 for, we get an extra $100 worth of revenue, what is our increase in cost charged by Te or Kiwi Rail?
You wouldn't pay $20. You'd use your gold card system.
So we effectively run a model for the cafe catering where Kiwi Rail is purchasing the goods that are sold via normal trade contracts. We agree the prices of the items, and in effect, we get all of the revenue minus their costs. So the labour is covered, the rental of the space is effectively covered through the operation of the train. So we get the profit on the product that's sold. There's no additional cost to us.
That's what I need to know to be able to fill in this equation, because just adding revenue from cafe into the gross revenue doesn't give the full proper picture, because we've got incremental cost increases. Every time somebody spends $1 on the cafe, we're going to get charged 10, 20, 30, 40, 80 cents for that dollar. So that's what I'm wanting to know. What is our average margin for money received through the cafe?
So we'll get that for you.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I've assumed from bullet points 1 and 2 here that 6.4 is 5% is added to the 6.4, and so it's an 11.4 increase. It's not a 6.4 and then a 5 point, which is if you did it compound, it would be more than 11.4. So just we could just in one sentence say we replace the 6.4 with an 11.4 increase. So we're on the same page?
Yes.
Good. What is the kickback or likely kickback from NZTA to our approach of going slower than they want?
We've provided some indicative advice back to NZTA. We're still waiting to hear from them as to what their concerns might be in terms of the numbers that we're talking about. But I know that they have viewed favourably what we've gone back to them with, because everything that they are saying in the discussion document, we either have done or are doing to try and boost sort of private share. So and it's difficult to say, I guess, because this is in the context of what every other public transport authority around the country is doing as well. So
just with the government
swings and roundabouts here,
way of working at the moment and squeezing every last dollar out, what you're indicating is that there's no real risk of being dictated to that you shall do 15, 20%, whatever.
I think there's always that risk, but it depends how heavy-handed, I guess, central government wants to be in that space. But I think it's quite positive that actually we are showing an increase, we are showing a willingness to work, and we are doing all the things that they've asked us to do.
Thank you.
I might just add to that, if I may, Madam Chair. So we had an obligation to provide an indicative position at the end of January, and we used this report as that position. By the end of March, we're required to provide a council resolved position. So this conversation plus conversations that will continue through the committees and come back to council by way of signing of those minutes and any matters arising that would come back through council will be the way that we'll pull that together. But it will all be subject, based on this, to annual plan consultation, and we've been very clear that these are decisions that are made with the community and that we would bring that feedback through. My high level of understanding is that most regions have gone back with an approach similar to ours, where they have said, we understand what you're looking for, we can achieve it over a period of time, and and then there are a range of different ways of regions suggesting that they would do that. Whether the agency comes back to us with a new approach that does smooth this over a longer period of time, but then we're all mandated to follow that same approach, is yet to be determined. But probably by June, July, their expectations will be very clear. So I should imagine that will come back into the annual plan decisions process for us.
All right, I've got Councillor Strange, Downard and Marr. Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the report and the modelling about where this might go. Yeah, I think given that we have increased 20%, and that was quite a big jump for people, yeah, the approach that's been recommended, in my opinion, would yeah, balance between what's been requested of us and what bus users can actually afford as well. The worst thing that we can do is go too hard and stop a lot of people using the bus. I know for a lot of parents, putting kids on buses within Hamilton to go to school in the mornings eases so much congestion for everyone else who needs to get to work. So we don't want to discourage that within Hamilton. If you've got multiple kids on the bus, we don't want to make it unaffordable. And, tossing up between, a vast increase or just dropping them off yourself, would only add to and give the opposite effect about efficiency and travel time on all roading corridors. So yeah, I'm all for the steady, smooth approach that we've got there. And good to hear that we're not out of step with what other regional councils are doing as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks for that. Councillor Downard.
Yeah, just to endorse what Angela said, but also the submission that was sent to central government on behalf of the RTC, I think that probably should be sent out to all the councillors, because it was a great submission. I think it gives a great overview to exactly what's been the recommendation here. And it will answer a lot of the questions that have already been asked. My only, and also to add to that, I've asked staff to bring to the RTC a paper on just the effect, even on that 20%, kind of what Councillor Hughes has asked for, is what effect that's had, because in that submission, which I didn't know, 25% of our car users or disability is a disability in our community. So they're the ones that are the most affected on this even 20% rate rise, and then we're going to a 6.4 plus 5. So I'm really interested to see what effect that has on those people. And I think that'll give us a good steer on then making another case to the central government of exactly why we've gone with this.
Yeah, yes. Very good. Councillor Marr.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just echoing the previous two councillors on their commentary around it, and certainly support moving along in this space. Just a quick question for my clarification. Is there any burden on the community transport total mobility from the annual fare and the way what the government's put through? Is there any burden that comes back to those community transport suppliers?
So if I'm understanding you, you're saying, does NZTA have an expectation that we would have similar increases reflected in what we would expect community transport providers to?
I know it's rated differently and it's a different scenario, but I just wonder if they're going to hit those operators and maybe via the supply.
It certainly wouldn't apply to community transport per se, because that's you can't set a fare for community transport. That's how it works. You can ask for a cohab, and that's it. I'm a little unsure about the total mobility situation though, but I don't think that's in there.
No, I think that's separate because that has a different funding stream through NZTA, and it has different sets of subsidy and rules around it. So at this stage, this is about public transport rather than anything else.
And it was just that clarification, making sure that money hits the ground. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm hearing general support for this approach.
Mindful we're reviewing this annually now anyway, but it's a good projection to give NZTA some confidence we're responding.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. So the final topic for today on the last slide for us is conversation that has come, as has been said already today, from the September Future Proof Public Transport Subcommittee into the December workshop, where you asked us to bring to you a proposal for a project for local share funding. Having ruled out new services in a range of different ways, this was the one that you asked us to come back to you with. The report notes that this is capital funded as opposed to operational rates funded. And I'll let Trudy expand from that point about the project and what it could bring to us.
Thanks, Phil. Look, so in brief, if we were to retain the 300,000 of CapEx, it would give us the opportunity to roll out 28 to 30 real-time screens around the network. At the moment, I guess the perfect example of what these screens mean and what they do is over across the road at the Transport Centre, where we've just been through a significant rejuvenation project, which has introduced these real-time signs and has fundamentally changed the wayfaring that our passengers now follow. So this opportunity, in essence, would extend that experience out onto the network. Now, I guess at the moment we have some very old infrastructure on the network, which is disestablished these days. So to replace that with the new technology of e-signs would, one, enable the team to push notify customers as or if there are disruptions or changes to a planned service. As well, it gives that passenger experience at the bus stop the visibility of when the actual bus will be arriving, and also the way we've identified where we'd put these real-time signs is, not just a single bus stop being serviced by one route, but more often than not, the multi-use stops. So it just allows the passenger to be informed and to be able to make, timely decisions. So without further ado, open to questions. I guess just like to mention that if we were to invest in this technology, it does come with a $26,000 operational cost. That said, the software that sits behind this technology was upgraded and was part of the transport rejuvenation project. So I think it's a fabulous way to leverage the latest and greatest. So open to questioning. Thank you.
Councillor Nicol.
Thanks. Well done, team. I think you've done a great job of bringing the cost from what was the original project and due to timing and those benefits you just said down. I think in context of the previous conversation of increasing prices, most of the fare box recovery, I imagine, comes from Hamilton. It would be only fair to ask Hamiltonians whether they would like an increase in experience. I'm just reflecting that in our LTP performance measures, the reliability and stuff hasn't improved a hell of a lot over the years, although we're tweaking some of those measures and how they actually get experienced, as I understand. But it is the fastest growing city in New Zealand, and it just boggles my mind that we don't have something as simple as this. I used it in Auckland 10 years ago, and I don't want the city to turn into Auckland, that's for sure. I want people using public transport. And I do hear from people, and myself have experienced using the app, and it's for one, annoying pulling it out when you're already rushing for the bus. Secondly, when the bus icon suddenly disappears from it and you have no idea. I just feel like being able to rock up to the bus stop and it's 2 minutes away. That's a positive experience. Or you see it's 17 minutes away. Oh, I can walk 10 minutes. It's just such a nicer way to travel. So I just think this is good to have in here as kind of one of these one-off. It's almost a trial, because if Hamiltonians like it, they'll give us feedback that they want more in future years, and perhaps then NZTA will be coming back to us with different funding in 3 years, but just clarifying we're talking, you say 300,000 capex, but you're also saying in here that it's actually about 40,000 per annum funded by depreciation, and it's then the maintenance costs. So we're actually talking about a rates impact of about 65,000 for Hamiltonians, that if they come back to us in submission, say they want this, we can, yep. Or if they come back and say, no, we want absolutely to stay the same because we need every dollar on our rates bill to disappear, then we can just still in June say, no. Is that correct?
That assumes we're consulting or communicating
yeah.
on this,
True.
which I don't think was probably at a level that we were anticipating.
Yeah,
that
you're
we would
right.
Be asking that question.
So it
So
is
it will be
a
a
kind of a
decision.
decision today, and then we'd start procuring it. Said something in here about like a 3-month, 4-month to implementation potential. Okay, thank you. It's good to understand that, thanks. But yeah, I've made my case. I just think it's worth improving a little bit, considering we're going to be charging it up a fair bit more.
Councillor Hughes, then Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jean, you mentioned an app. Have we got an app at the moment, a real-time live app that gives us by route?
Yeah, I use the transit app. Yeah.
So
it gets used by a lot of regions around.
So
it's a very generic one. Yeah.
So we can get something on our telephone which is going to give us exactly the same information that's going to be on these screens. Do I understand it correctly or not?
I saw under the benefits that it had
Let's
a different
get staff
integration,
to
but I will
clarify.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so can somebody explain why we're going to spend $300,000 plus an ongoing cost when I can get it on here for nothing?
It comes back to the passenger experience, and not everyone has the technology, at their pocket. These screens, as mentioned before, over at the Transport Centre, it's managing a number of different routes coming and going. It's visible. It also gives an audio option for those that are sight impaired. It is about enhancing the passenger experience on the street and not solely relying on, personal choice.
Thank you. I'm sorry I can't support it.
Hmm?
I'm sorry I can't support
I think Councillor Strange, you've made the comment in the past about that when we think about kids using the PT services and elderly using the PT services, that their engagement with phones as a technology to access the arrival time, it's not always as straightforward, and that these types of signs would be beneficial in that particular case. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes has probably stolen my thunder a little bit. I go overseas to Australia quite regularly, particularly Sydney, and occasionally somewhere else. But and I think we all do. But in Sydney, you've got an app, and when I go to bus stops, that's what people use. And when I go to the train stations, that's when you've got all the displays and you can see when the trains are coming. But when you're out in the bus stops, everyone's on their phone. And I think we sell people short, the amount of kids that have phones. I know they can't have them in the schools anymore, but they still have them in their bags. My mother, who's 86, absolutely astounds me what she does with her phone. So sometimes I think we underrate people and what they can do. So I am wondering why we're investing in fixed infrastructure when we've got the ability to utilise apps, and those get updated. They're up to date in real time, and I know we rely on those apps when overseas to just direct us because we don't know the local stuff. So I'm just, I can see potentially in major hubs like you're outlining, there may be a case for it, but certainly the expansion of the network, which is another day. But why would we do that when we've got we can get specific apps for the city. So I really don't want to just charge into this, that we need to think about it. And what does the community, do they want us to have fixed infrastructure? It might be, look, I love to do things that make you feel good, but the reality, do I need to have them? No, it's nice to have them, but I don't have to have them. And sometimes I think we've got to ask that question. Do we have to have them, or is there an alternative? So in some ways, I'm on the same page as Chris. Thanks.
Councillor Barr and then Councillor Kneeban.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to echo the same thoughts. And for me, practically, I would have thought a phone app, at least if you're at home, you can tell that the bus is 17 minutes late rather than getting to the station and finding it is, or it's arrived early. One of the other issues I have with it too is just that with the battery life, and be it solar or freestanding, seems to be a redundancy period for this signage of about 5 years, which is a concern that we're going to invest in that and then be looking to replace part of the infrastructure in 3 to 5 years, according to the report. I'll just leave that there. It is in the paperwork. So,
Councillor Kneeban.
Look, I'm I've got a bit of an open mind, and I suspect the only way to really answer my question is to find out from the community what they want. Look, I know certainly in Cambridge, the elderly sector of the community have been the biggest growth area for bus use, and part of that's because of the concessions they get as well. And look, I acknowledge what Noel said. My mother was very good on the phone. My old man was bloody hopeless. So he couldn't push the buttons either because his fingers were so crooked. So he couldn't do that even if he wanted to, you know. So yeah, I kind of feel like we should probably do a bit of consultation, and I'm confident we'll get good feedback from the elderly sector. They're pretty interested in what we spend their money on.
Sorry, Janine, did you say this was something that would trigger public consultation?
No, so through the chair, I wasn't expecting that expenditure of this level would naturally trigger the need to consult.
Doesn't trigger it, but it's a new thing, and it is a piece where we're offering, to use more local share than we usually would. I wonder whether we could consult on it.
Well,
to give,
we can.
yeah.
I guess it's at the small end of what we typically consult on, but at the end of the day, we can ask whatever we want feedback on.
And maybe if I could just switch it around for a moment, this was originally 100% funded by the Climate Emergency Relief Fund, and it was in our programme. It's currently in our programme, and it would be removed at the point that you make the annual plan decision to reduce the local share to mirror what the Crown share has been, which is the position we're taking with all of our other public transport improvements. But this is one that is already in our programme. It was approved in the long-term plan, and we're asking effectively for it to be local share funded as opposed to subsidised. So in some ways we have already consulted on it. It's already in our programme.
Different to consult on it as part of a massive package of a long-term plan and having a direct question, a perception of community of whether they give feedback on it.
Yeah, and I think the differentiation is on how it's funded. So obviously previously 100% funded, not by us, as opposed to this being a ratepayer funded initiative.
That's the question.
Sorry?
Sorry, I've got a question, but I'm just talking out loud to myself.
Yeah, we're spending a lot of time on, as you often raise with us, Councillor Smith, we spent a lot of time on a couple of 100,000. So I'm hoping we can move this along. I've got Councillor Strange, Dunbar Smith, and then Councillor.
Yeah, interesting to hear the points of view around the table. I guess for me, being involved in PT for 5 years, those regular bus users, this is the one thing. I believe the old ones were end of life. And since they've been removed, people have really noticed that they're no longer there and, crave that reassurance, often with the app. Sometimes it's not 100% accurate. yeah, it's a little bit clunky at times. And also acknowledging that sure, young people might have phones, but no data. Often they phone their parents to, I've heard, ask when the bus is coming. And if you've got several children phoning you at the same time, wondering when the buses are coming, and you're trying to get work done, it's highly disruptive. Anyway, what I've observed is that people who use the bus regularly have no other option, and they use it because they're low income or they need to get to places, and maybe they've only got one car per household. So it would be a luxury for them to maybe have everyone within their house have a smartphone to be able to access that information. So I would advocate that it makes sense to have them in the bus hubs at this stage. The transport centre ones are fantastic, and especially for the likes of up at the hospital, where there's multiple routes that converge there. It would be a good test case. Perhaps we're looking at 28, perhaps that number could shrink, just to progress this until such time as NZTA funding becomes available. So I don't want this to just completely go, because as we say, it was 100% funded and then the rug got pulled out from under us. And yeah, users really, really do need this technology. We want bums on seats. We want people to use the bus, so we have to provide them a good experience. So yeah, open to a bit more discussion.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question. So on item 22, it says it was 3.172 million approved through the LTP, does not have match funding. I presume the Climate Emergency Fund was 100%, but then we seem to have set aside 3.172 million in our LTP. Item 22 on page 317 is correct.
Who's speaking?
Just in response to that, I believe that's the total projected local share for the low cost, low risk program that had not been supported by NZTA. So of that 3.172, there was the 300,000 amongst all of those low cost, low risk items, which the majority were service level improvements.
So
That
have we
makes
made
sense.
provision for the 3.172 in the LTP? No.
In the LTP, yes.
Right.
But in the annual plan, because the match funding from NZTA hasn't been, that's all been, anything that doesn't have NZTA funding has been removed for the purposes of the annual plan. This is the exception of requesting that this comes back onto the table for funding, even though it would be 100% rates funded.
I'm inclined to agree with Angela. I think there are people out there who don't have phones or don't have access to phones, but I'd be happy also for it to be part of a consultation to ask people whether they want it or not.
All right. But I've got Councillor Smith and then Councillor Hughes. You gonna have another go?
We're negotiating.
I know.
So having read this report, I'm still wondering, is it targeted rate on Hamilton, or is it across the board, or public good, or is it general rate, or where's it the cost? Where does it lie?
So at the moment, it would be a targeted rate on Hamilton only, because it's the only place that we target. But because it's regional rating for next year, that's not going to differentiate where those displays sit. But
Uh,
obviously,
that's-
so it becomes part of the regional public transport rating requirement.
That's
which-
what I worry about as we get into, we're paying for Hamilton in the region. So let's not go there.
Well, but I think if we look at the total the rate funding per annum, and then apportion that in terms of where the majority of that funding is drawn from anyway, which is
I'm
Hamilton.
paying my $33 to help Hamilton out.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Councillor Hughes.
Happy to talk to that, Angela afterwards.
Okay.
Just the comments you made. And
No, yeah, okay.
At the end of the table.
I just had one that was, I get the feeling that we're a little bit split, but I thought that either through adding it as a consultation question or talking about whether it's a slightly smaller number of units. So, because my main intention why I was pushing it so hard at the start was because currently Hamilton has 0. Like I said, Auckland had quite a lot and still does have quite a lot, like I used recently, around bus stops. It's about, for me, it's say you only did the hospital, you would still give Hamiltonians an experience, especially in a very vulnerable, tense spot, of what it's like, which would then inform their future submissions to us or other things. It's kind of just about getting something off the ground as opposed to exactly what's proposed. Question is whether it's do we consult or is it the number that's the issue? But I do appreciate the question.
Can
This is very Hamilton.
can I just test the question that is before us, which is, do we support putting this in as in all the numbers, not reducing the numbers, and paying for it out of the I was trying to think of a much better name than just rate, but
the rate, the
targeted
target
rate.
rate.
So can I get a show of hands who supports what is before us right now? Yes?
Does this impact on this model we have before us that we've just agreed to? So this additional money, does that impact on the numbers that we have before us?
Which numbers are you?
It's very minimal, isn't it? Okay. No, that's what I just wanted to make sure we're clear on.
And any of those rating impact numbers in here will need to be refreshed based on any decisions that council makes today anyway.
Yeah.
And particularly because around the PT rating, the preferred option has changed from what we had included in the rating impacts that we provided.
Madam Chair, can I just
Yes.
have one comment? Sorry, because I haven't had a comment.
Yeah.
If we look at that, we've done a 20% fare rise in July. We're looking at another 11.4. We haven't spent anything on, Trudy, when was the last time on the infrastructure on those things for quite a fair time? You know, we're investing in public transport to a certain extent. We're asking the public to pay more fares, and yet we're scribbling over 65,000.
Yep. I'm supportive of what you've put forward today, myself. So can I get a show of hands? Who is in support? We got one. Don't know online what people are thinking. All right, well, that's an indication. Great. All right. Okay, are we done with the transport now? Okay, so
Thank you very much.
I'm just flagging for councillors that we still have the business process manager business case. We also have regional economic development. And then, oh, gosh, right, okay. I am endeavoring to get us through this today. So it's going to require everybody to dig deep and stick with it to the end, okay?
Afternoon, everybody. You can have a
No,
cup of
I'm
tea.
going to get through one more.
This is
and
going to
then
be
I might
very,
let you
very,
have a cup of
very,
tea.
very quick. So
Two more then.
LPP The only thing that was in the LGP was a projected increase in the timing of the IRIS spend. You know, that the total spend is the same, but that's just about timing over the number of years. If you flick forward there, Dave, you'll see whilst we had predicted that it would go up, it's actually going to be coming down because the timing is pushing some stuff out. So there's some savings in the IRIS space. When you look at your documentation, just the way that the finances are put together, you'll see that comes under the category of community education. It's just because the person who's overseeing that, we have to put things into a place for holding it. So when you see the community education change in funding, that's the IRIS Next Gen program costs going down. The primary industry engagement costs are going down by that 200,000. That's all related to the government's pause. And so again, it's a less spend next year because things have been paused. That EnviroSchools cost, that's net neutral, more spend but more revenue, so it's net neutral. And as Councillor Ma identified earlier, the capitalising of the previous loan around the farm water project means that we're not having to have loan repayments and depreciation repayments, etc. And so that has resulted in a saving of $600,000 going forward, whilst using the past year's service to deal with capitalising on the loan. As promised, when we've set up the wording in the annual plan to enable the recovery of costs associated with Taharoa when we know what they are. So there's not we haven't put expenditure in. What we'll put is a mechanism to recover. So when the expenditure happens, we'll forecast expenditure and forecast revenue to cover that. We go on to the next page, Dave. And then that's what you want to see, nil.
Yeah,
from last
that's
year to this year.
exactly what we want to see. Nice.
There you go, Stu, you can have a cup of coffee.
Councillor Downard.
Yeah, Brent, my concern is just the environment schools one. Why is TAs fully funded at that and were we pulled out completely from that?
No, this is what we do with our TAs is we encourage them to be engaged with it. And so when they get engaged with it, they provide their contribution. And so we spend the money on the EnviroSchools facilitators, but this funding is TA saying we'd like to do some more in that space. And so we get some more funding. And so the level of activity in a different area often is depending on how much the TAs want to have happen in their space. So it's just, we're constantly looking to try to grow with our partners. So this growth is funded by those TAs.
Yeah, as long as we don't lose sight that, because it's our connection through the younger generation to WRC.
Yeah, absolutely. So our facilitators that we engage deliver the work program. It's just the TAs are a funder to, simplistically, if you think in an area there was going to be 3 schools and now there's 5 schools, we can go to more schools and our facilitators work with those schools, but that extra funding that's going to cover those costs is coming from that TA.
Brent, I think it's a really good question that's been raised. There is no risk to that funding from TAs as they go through their planning processes?
So absolutely. So if TAs go through, TAs get their money. I think earlier I've spoken to the council about some of the TAs are getting some of their funding from central government, and central government is tightening the books, as you're aware. The way that we have our contracts with our contractor is that we're not at risk. And so if the TA funding reduces, that contractor that delivers the work for us has less work, but we aren't obliged to backfill that funding. So there's no funding risk to this council. It would be a service reduction in the TA area if the funding that they're relying upon dries up. They will get, if they don't get the funding from the area for 5 schools, it might be back down to 3, which is why we spend whilst you will no doubt spend a bit of time with your TA counterparts to identifying that this is a priority area for them, but they have lots of priorities. And so some of the money that they use has been earmarked. So I think Chair Pamela is aware that some of the councils get money from the waste levy, and the government's been talking about pulling that waste levy funding for TAs, and that might impact on some of their abilities to fund their share, which would mean that the service that they get in their communities would reduce.
You good?
Yeah,
you want some more?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just feel that it's important that, you know, when we look at what we've done in the long-term plan and biodiversity and biosecurity and all that, this follows into these Enviro schools. I was involved with it right back when I was on board of trustees, and I think it's an important part, that connection with the environment, originally Environment Waikato, and I think it should still be a big part of our core business to be in that space with the younger generation.
Really appreciate your support with that, Councillor. And we do get in the delivery of our Enviro Schools program support from our scientists and SPY, our biosecurity people in Greg's directorate. But at the end of the day, it's being able to fund those contractors, and that's where this money is important.
Councillor Hughes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Probably too early for you to comment, but I was listening to a lady from Tourism New Zealand talking on a couple of days ago, and one of the reasons the cruise ships are not coming to New Zealand any longer is because of the huge compliance costs of making sure that they're clean. Now, are we going to have this issue for boats that are coming into our territorial waters off Taharoa? She was talking $600,000 a ship in terms of making sure that they comply with our standards of cleanliness. So just something to be aware of. No doubt you guys will get there, but yeah, thought I'd better put it on the table.
Absolutely, Councillor. One of the multiple things on the list of things for us taking over that function is what are our obligations in the biosecurity space. Don't know the answer to your question, but that piece of work that you've helped give us some funding for to figure out what exactly our responsibilities are. But in terms of costs, if there are biosecurity costs that come, we'll be looking to sheet them onto Taharoa.
All right. Okay, no further questions for Brent. We shall move on. Okay, now we've got science policy and information. SPY, such a cool acronym, really.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and councillors. Should be relatively swift here. A couple of things that I do want to highlight here for councillors is on Monday we will be starting our regional coastal plan hearings. So with the it's just a bit of jiggery pokery in terms of timeline and notifying the coastal plan. We'd previously anticipated year 2 of the LTP, annual plan year we're talking about, that we would be heading off to the Environment Court. We've subsequently amended that because it's likely if we get our decisions out this year from the hearings panel, which we're anticipating, we won't be in the Environment Court until the following year. So that has been shifted, but that was already part of our LTP deliberations this time last year. The 3 things that are mentioned there are already in the LTP. If I just direct you to page 45 of your agenda, that's got the updates on our business cases and how they are tracking. So thankfully the majority of them are coloured green, which is great. We've got our water security plan, which has a revised KPI, having been through Stratton policy. Whangamarino and Waikato does have an amber because of external funding. So we didn't manage this year to secure all the external funding from the Waikato River Authority that we had anticipated, but there are other funders out there who are keen to have conversations with us. The coastal and marine, a bit of a slow start really, just when you've got a small team and there's sickness that goes through half the team, it tends to delay things. Other than that, Madam Chair, if we go on to the next slide. It's me.
All right, good. Nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Now where?
Janine, are you going to do anything on corporate or?
Wasn't intending to. That would be a peers game in terms of with Nev as well. There's a bit of mixed bag in there around some of the IT costs as well as
How
property.
about this? Any questions from councillors in regard to this section in the report? No questions? Great. Okay. What? Oh, did you have a question? Sorry. Councillor Hughes. Okay, all right. Okay. So we've got, so what we've got left to discuss before we run through some final numbers is the business process management or the process management business case and the regional economic development. Have I got that correct?
Yes, and Janine, are there any consultation matters that you wanted to raise?
Yes, so maybe at the end of the conversation, I've just been keeping some notes around things that we might need to revert back to in terms of some of the conversation, plus things I've picked up in terms of potential content for the consultation document. So we can reflect on that, as well as the report does cover off consultation document and timeframes.
Okay, because what I'd be keen, if we can, is I'd be keen to get through this business case and the regional economic development conversation so that then we can take a break and we can assess where the numbers are looking. And we've got a bit of time there to have that over a cup of tea, just reflect on where we're at and then come back and be in a position to make a decision. All right, so just laying that out for you. Neville, are you speaking to the business case? Sorry, Jen, did you have a question?
So question on this business case, just from page 33, it talks, there's a table, there's total new operating expenditure requested is 8,000 and then the total is 138. Had we previously approved this and now it's just adjusting it to 8,000, or is this the first time we're making a decision on this? Just double checking, just with LTPs having happened.
No.
Okay, so this is new? Thank you. Can I?
Right. Oh, kia ora anō koutou. So you've had an opportunity to read the report, and I note that there has been a couple of questions posed already, so I'm waiting to hear those. I won't go through it in great detail, but I will just raise a couple of key points that I think are important. So the business case is informed by a couple of reports which are attached. Those include the negotiated consulting report, which was undertaken of the state of health of our process management within the organisation. That was done in June of 23. That's also in 2023, we had the Te Korowai Integrity Survey, which also highlighted some gaps that our people were telling us they had concerns about in regard to the way processes were being conducted across the organisation and the integrity and the consistency of the application of those. We also had the IQANZ review audit that was undertaken in March of last year, which looked at the post-implementation review of Reboot or our new corporate information system. And also the Nintex desktop imaging report, which was just really clarified some of the concerns we have around the way processes are managed in the organisation. Look, ultimately, the outcome of that was that ELT, through our corporate strategy group, determined that we needed to do more work. We formed a process management group of people across the organisation who went away and tried to respond to the findings of all of these reports. And it became quickly identified that there was no central point of responsibility for these critical functions. Now, all organisations, particularly organisations that are complex such as ours, have a multitude of processes and systems that we use. The technology alone is not going to get us where we want to go. What we do need to do is underpin it with processes that are clear, that are standardised, that are managed, and able to be audited and reported on and continuously improved, that everybody understands and can follow. Unfortunately, what we've had is over time is a development of
interesting ways of doing the same things. And that leads to inefficiencies and costs us from a productivity perspective and a financial perspective right across the system. Fixing this situation, this reality, will take an investment. Our current model, you'll see two models or two options are proposed in the business case. One is status quo, option one. Option two is to take on board the recommendation, which is to employ a fixed term role for 12 months at a cost of $130,000, around an $8,000 component to support their functions and their ability to do the work, to be able to grip the problem that we've got and we're currently facing. Now, I think Councillor Smith's comments were in regard to the realities of this person being able to achieve these lofty goals. It will come down to the calibre of the person, the direction and the authority they're given to act, noting that they will not be doing this particular tasks. Their job is to raise awareness and educate the organisation, primarily at a leadership level. So I'm talking managers and team leaders about the importance and the criticality of having good process management in an organisation such as ours. So that's their first and primary function. That is about building a culture of process management into the organisation, not one that's bolted on or added on at some point down the track, but one that starts at the beginning of everything we do. So that's, I guess, a high-level view of what the intent is. Current status will just continue to see a decline and a lack of ownership of processes. I also note Councillor Smith's comment about, this is a management thing that should just be done. Well, that is the status quo arrangement we have at the moment, is a management thing that should just be done. Obviously, it's not being done based on the findings of the reports that have been presented to you in this business case. So I rest the case and I'm happy to take questions.
Councillor Hughes.
Look, thanks for your report, Neville. And like Councillor Smith, I was quite disappointed at the results coming out in those reports, but they are what they are. And to a degree, they're understandable. We've thrown some new systems in here now. I think Infor was a major step up for the organisation, and there's been a lot of focus on that, which means other things get left, and they shouldn't. And I don't have any argument against not having proper systems in place and proper document management and processes. They're absolutely essential for a properly functioning and efficient organisation. But my view on this at the moment is that there's a lot of moving parts. We've got chief executives currently working through a particular project, which you're all aware of. I've got some concerns. I had a brief discussion with Janine at lunchtime about Infor and how we can better use that and how we can get better integration within the organisation. And I'd like to have that discussion probably offline out of council, just with the people that are directly concerned with it. And I think that might then sort of identify, we've got a business process improvement person in place at the moment, a business analyst, if I understand correctly. And I'm just happy to allocate some funds, but I'm not sure that this is the sort of person we need to take us to that next stage in terms of getting all those systems locked together and getting an educational process in place that ensures everybody's on the same page and up to speed what needs to be done to make our systems bulletproof. So yeah, it's not a question as such, it's just a general feeling that I've got about those reports and their findings.
Can I, just before you turn your light off though, can I get your thoughts on the option one or option two? Have you got a view?
No, I don't, because I think there's a bigger picture behind this that needs to be looked at before we can actually make that decision.
Neville, I think the business process, that's the data management role that we're looking at, how we manage data in the organisation.
Yes, so this role would work very closely with the data governance role that we've also put in place. That role started in October. The purpose of that role is to be able to understand where our data is collected across the organisation and how it's managed and how it's governed, how it's prioritised, and therefore how it can be utilised effectively for other projects such as AI, potentially machine learning, et cetera, down the track. To be able to get the data structured properly, we need good business processes. So the two do work hand in hand. You know, and it is about process, people, and systems. And this is about the process piece. The business and system stuff, we've got enough systems on track online at the moment, and if Iris Next Gen coming is going to bring its own unique challenges and opportunities. The people piece is really critical, and that's around culture. So we're trying to bring all of those three elements together to form an articulate and an operating picture that makes sense. Recognise that nothing is standing still, nothing is static. It is all moving at an exponential pace, and it's our job to grasp all of these pieces and weave them into a coherent state for so our people can be successful.
All right, I've got Councillor Dunbar-Smith, Councillor Nicol, then Councillor Smith. Ben.
Thank you. And just to clarify, so what Chris was talking about is actually a data management person, and that's different than this, which is a business process person.
No, I think he's talking about two elements. I think he's also talking about processes as much as he's talking about data and systems. But what I'm saying is we've identified those three key components: people, process, and systems. And we have got strategies, or this is part of that overall strategy, to bring the three together to give us an effectively functioning organisation. Unfortunately, what's happened over time, and it is systemic of large organisations that have grown, is that we have siloed approaches to how we do our work, because we have areas of specialty and expertise, and that's the way the organisation functions. And as a consequence, is not necessarily a consistent and one-size-fits-all end-to-end process across the organisation to do things that look similar. So as a consequence, we have lots of different ways of doing things, and they become more and more obvious when we bring a system in, say, such as Infor, which we bring in, and it has quite a standardised, systematic way of an approach to doing things. And there's also a whole lot of benefit that can come from the system that we need to unlock and realise, but we can't do that if everyone's doing it differently or they're failing to understand how to use it because they don't have clear processes to follow. So processes are important, foundational. The system helps us to make the system work. And then the data that flows from the systems, no matter if it's Infor or a multitude of the other ones that we've got in play at the moment or we're bringing on board, give us the insight, the intelligence to be able to do things better and differently in the future. So they are triumphant. They are three key elements: people, processes, and systems that need to work together to give us the benefits and the maximise the investments that we've got into this organisation.
Yeah, so it's not duplicating an existing role. This is a separate role.
Separate role, working together for a fixed term, as is the data role, to be able to give us a vision of what the future looks like. We're also, the Chief Executive is also working through a process at the moment around our enterprise work management, which has a direct correlation, which is how we manage projects. So we have got a number of strategic concepts underway at the moment that all do work together. They all work together to give us a more efficient and effective organisation.
Yeah, having worked in an organisation that brought in a business process person, it made a big difference.
Okay.
A lot of pushback from existing staff.
Oh, yes.
And it was very effective. And then the new chief executive got rid of it, and then there was an OPEX blowout. So,
yeah. Oh, there you understand.
Nice. All right, Councillor Nicol.
I appreciate discussion. And I think you've answered the question. This does address that in the Risk and Assurance Committee, there was that report by KPMG on our project management.
Yes, that's the one referred to.
Yeah,
IQ
I thought so.
Yeah. Infor, you mean?
No, it was our project management system, way we were adhering to it, and there was a lack of productivity in the project management space.
Right.
And Janine might recall, it was about 2 meetings ago. I made a comment that I thought it was quite, I won't repeat the word, but it shocked me a bit how poor it was. And so I appreciate that this would help address that. I suppose I am interested to know, where would you expect to report the results of this,
I
of these
would ex-
benefits? Where
would
can we look for them should this be approved?
expect through either finance and services or risk and assurance. I'm not sure which.
No, I mean, I can understand as well from what some of the others have said. Like, I think we have undershot in the change management at times. And so I suppose this is part of the fixing that, and anything that gets rid of silos, I also hugely appreciate. And my last point is I have learned over the years how many hoops you have to jump through to get to this point of you sitting here to ask for this kind of amount. So it's a bit of faith there as well that, as you're saying, it fits with a wider piece, and it's not on its own. I'm keen to hear a few others. But yeah, I'm leaning towards that this organisation would benefit in productivity from this, based on those things we've seen before.
Thanks. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I preface this by saying I don't intend to offend anybody, so hopefully thick skin. To my way of thinking, this is a Band-Aid. Neville has talked about the culture and how things have happened. This sort of thing happens in all organisations. Therefore, it was predictable. And therefore, I'm laying it squarely on management, senior management here, as to why we've got into this situation. So I am not supportive in principle of just throwing money into another position. I remember Paul East, the Honourable Paul East in 1997 said to us when I was at the Ministry of Justice, saying, if you want some more money, what are you going to give up? Where are you going to find some savings because you're not getting any more? And I think we're in that sort of environment with our government at the moment. But I'm actually disappointed to see this situation, and the first issue is we go to the community and ask for more money to fix something that we should have not got into. So sorry, Mr. Chief Executive, I can't support you on this one. I may be open to reviewing that, but I don't see just throwing money to do something. And I would rather say to you, you've got your budget for the staff. If you need it, find a way to do it. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I can just correct one thing. I don't think we're asking the community for any more money. I think it's from a prior year surplus, the request. It might be pedantic, but it is. I understand that. I just wanted to check that there's, given it's a live recording, that there's any misinterpretation.
I've got Councillor Downard, Councillor Marr, and Councillor Mahuta. Oh, sorry.
If I could just reply to that, Madam Chair, in the sense that the full package is in front of councillors and that we've the answers there.
Councillor Downard.
Yeah, it's a no from me.
Councillor Marr.
Yeah, just supportive of Noel's comments too. You know, we have a corporate strategy group. We have a tool in the ProMap that was working. Reading through the reports, it seems to be having fallen to the wayside. So to me, that's the ownership of the owners, the sponsors, the experts within that structure to keep that going, to have those succession plans in place. So to me, it's an in-house issue that why it slid. Not pointing the finger at anyone because I don't know who is responsible across those categories of ownership, but the reports are pretty clear on why that tool slid. They say it's not the tool. I had a quick look through the ProMap stuff. I mean, it's a multifaceted program. There's AI, there's all sorts of things in it. So we have that ability. I think it's just in-house it's slid, and I think that's where it should be addressed, is in-house. Thank you.
Councillor Mahuta.
Kia ora, who's responsible? I probably am, because I did all the the previous terms that funded the work that was done. But again, proud to say we're the council laws that saw this different example. Council from barely having Microsoft DOS as a unified system to what we have now. So knowing that we've done all the technical upgrades to our systems, we've finally cited on one side. It only makes sense to me that we'd smooth out our business processes once we come together. My only question to Neville is, change agents aren't designed to hang around. So why is this not a contract? Why is it a whole role? You know, why isn't it a short-term contract to deliver and exit? Why do we need this ongoing person? Is probably because you'd want to know this capability after this warehousing and bringing together of the newly aligned business process, one site, one system, one workplace ethic. I get that, but then that person shouldn't have to hang around. Kia ora.
Kia ora, councillor. Though the role is fixed term for 12 months. That is the vision, is that they come in, do the mahi and get the job done.
Awesome, thank you. That's how I read it, but people are counting it as an extra role for ongoing, I think. So thank you for that.
Thanks for clarifying that, Tippa. Anything else on this? Any other questions? I'm keen to get a straw poll on this. Those who support this 12 months, not 1 month, or 12-month fixed term contract to bet in these systems, can I get a hands up? All right, 5. That's not a majority, so 5.
I was trying to get my hand up.
Sorry. 6. How many have I got now? Sorry. Okay. I'm going to do this again. Let's do it again. We want to be on, accurate here. So support, hands up. 6, 7 online. How many have I got? 1, 3, 4. What was it? 7, 6 in support. Okay. All right. Again, that's just a straw poll because we're just doing, we're doing these straw polls so that we can populate a spreadsheet and see where we're landing. All right. Okay. While Karen is coming up, just anybody want to stand up and stretch your legs for this last business case? I didn't mean stretch your legs around the block. You better be running back.
Give it up, she'll take it.
I know. Hey, if he doesn't want to be part of the economic development discussion.
Don't leave me this way.
But who all have I lost? Robbie? Where's Warren? Oh, for goodness sake. You know. No, we're gonna continue on. I did not adjourn the meeting, so we're gonna continue on. Okay. All right. Okay. Economic development. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Afternoon, councillors. As you will recall, during the long-term plan, we were considering the allocation of $750,000 a year for economic development, subject to greater accountability measures. At the point of decision-making, things changed and staff were directed to continue regional economic development activities in the wake of Te Waka announcing its decision to close, and to come back to you with options for how this might be achieved. We came back to you in September with 3 options, and at that point you asked us to go away and develop a proposal, costed up, for how do we work with the existing economic development people throughout the region, the entities and the councils, and how do we leverage those activities and optimize regional economic development. What we have brought to you today is approval of $604,000, or request approval of $604,000 over the next 2 years to facilitate and integrate activities for regional economic development. The proposal is consistent with your direction to date and has also been informed by our stakeholders, and they are very supportive of this direction. This allows us to treat this as a proof of concept over the next 2 years leading up to the next long-term plan. And if this is an effective form of regional economic development, as our stakeholders believe it will be, it allows you then to consider sustainable funding over the next 10 years through that long-term plan. So I'll leave it with you for questions. I'm very happy to have this discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of extra comments I'd add in. You may be aware or may not that Te Waka is still ongoing as an entity, unless something's happened in the last day or two, and which is a little bit confusing given that they'd previously said they were closing down. And we've also had a pretty strong pitch. There's been a conversation from the Waikato Chamber of Commerce with us about wanting to kind of work hand in hand with us from providing a business development opportunity on the guise that business development will lead to regional economic development. Our conversation with them last week is that, well, we're talking with councillors, it's not our preferred option that we're putting to you, but we feel that this role would work over the next couple of years to come up with what for the next LTP, the long-term view, and hence this is this has been sought from the Regional Development Fund and not a rating impact. So just make sure everybody's on song about that.
And also we have discussed this around the mayoral forum table as well. And there's been a number of discussions with the economic development professionals within the TAs. And there's support for this.
That's correct. That's correct. And not just councils, also business community and all the other entities that actually meet as part of the Regional Economic Development Forum.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I've got a list. I've got Councillor Dunbar Smith first, and then I'll come to you, Stu. And
just wanted to clarify on the page where you've got the commercial case set out, what the 302,000 will be used for.
What page, just so we're on it?
So this is page 4 of 5 of the attachment 7.1. All these bits.
About the agenda page.
No, it's not on the agenda. It's right at the back.
Page 54.
Oh, is that 54? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Dunbar Smith. So we're looking at the appointment of a person to be this lead facilitator, who would then arrange partnerships and form a view and provide that to the regional council. It allows for some admin support, 10 hours a week for this individual, because there will be a lot of appointments and a lot of meetings and convening to support them with. It also, should council be of a wish to do so, in the same way that you have independent advisors sitting on your risk and assurance committee, it does allow some funding should you want to have independent business advice supporting your governance decision making. There's also funding for the strategy development, because that will include a lot of meeting and perhaps some input for an evidence base to be supported. And there is a communications aspect to this, so you might have to fund photography, some digital support as part of the contribution to the wider regional network.
So just to clarify, so you've got down here 1.2 FTEs essentially in the fixed term.
Yeah.
And then the head count you've got down there is 2 FTEs. There's also FTEs at 1.2. So can you explain what you mean?
Full-time equivalent.
Yep.
So you've got one full-time role, 0.2.
Yep.
So 1.2, but 2 heads, 2 people.
Yeah.
You
But
got
them there as,
one head and 0.2 of a head.
Yeah.
yeah, you've got
Yeah.
them there as fixed term, but also as FTE, and that gives you your head count. Okay, I see. It's not
Yeah.
2 people. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. And 302,000 seems a lot of money for 1.2 people. Is it going to be something you'd go out as a contract? I mean, how are they going to allocate the money that would be used
So
towards other developments?
So you've got approximately half of that is toward the people who are doing the job, and the other half is the doing.
So would council control the doing, or would you subcontract someone to do $302,000 worth of work?
The intention is that there'll be a lot of the doing, but it's things like convening. You have to pay for venue hire sometimes, and you have to pay for a publication or a digital contribution. So that would be where that's
I
funded.
think Councillor Dunbar-Smith, if I understand your question correctly, is it going to be someone who's contracted in, or is it someone who's going to be employed or whatever? Do you want to unpack?
Oh, no, I think I understand somebody going to be contract for this. I just wonder how much would be retained, the funding control would be retained external to the contractor that WRC would manage. For example, if there's 1.7,
The governance would remain with this council around this table.
but if there's 300,000, 170 goes towards a contractor, that leaves 130,000. Is that then allocated out by somebody like you, for example, towards the projects that need doing, or is that
So there
how
will,
does this manage?
which, I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
So if I,
A fixed term employee or a contractor, Karen?
Fixed term.
So
Yep.
it's money held within council.
Right.
so we pay for the person.
Yes.
And we also there's money within this to hire a venue if they need to convene a meeting, that sort of thing.
Or to commission some evidence to help
Yeah.
prove a case for the strategy that they'll be working on with stakeholders.
And who does that report to? Who's that person report to?
It'll report into the Chief Executive's office, to my role.
Okay. And the other question is on the page 3 of this, page 53, of the 100,000 we allocated in June, 50,000 has been spent on the economic areas locally led.
Yeah.
The remaining 50,000 is available to be reallocated or reprioritised.
If you think that's important, currently the intention is to use that on going into each of these functional economic areas and working with the stakeholders about what do they need for their economic development. And it is something that's been discussed around the table with the councils. However, if Councillor Dunbar-Smith, council is of a mind to redirect that can be considered.
So they could, I mean, I'm supportive of this project. I just, slightly confusing to me about how much is going to a contract person or fixed term employee and how much is going to be going to projects such as carrying on with the industry cluster development or whatever. Yeah.
So just to clarify, Karen, salary labour versus direct cost. That's what I think the question is.
Yeah. About half.
Councillor Newburn.
So I'm generally supportive. I only sort of became vaguely aware of what our old colleagues were supposedly still doing the other day. And I'm just curious, I feel like we need to know what their plans are so we don't compete or clash, if that makes sense, because I'm also not sure how they view us in light of how things sort of ended last time, and I don't want to work us, if that makes sense.
We've had a number of ongoing conversations and we are waiting anxiously the outcome of some of their decisions.
And yeah, I mean, and
It's an
asking those,
independent organization and.
yeah, and look, and asking those questions, I'm kind of foreseeing that we'll consult on, would we consult on this? We wouldn't, because I guess we need some formal feedback from the key parties before we jump into it. I kind of feel like we should, but don't get me wrong, I'm supportive of it, but just we need to know what the playing field is. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand the point you're raising, Stu. I suppose that I am comfortable with the level of feedback we have gotten from all of our TA partners and from the business and stakeholder community that we have engaged with to get us to this point. It would be good if there was some clarity from Tawaka. Can't force that hand.
May I just offer you some confidence, Councillor Kneebone, that we have actually shaped this in a way that means that we won't be tripping over anyone, and that's the intention. Whether it be our council colleagues or the business community.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just dancing around the issue of not getting into operational matters. I would have no confidence if anyone who was associated with Te Waka was to be employed in this position. Sorry, I want the confidence that we're getting fresh views and a whole view rather than where we got to. So that's probably enough said on the subject from me. Thank you.
Councillor Marr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going back to your comments of your confidence with the stakeholder feedback, what do you see as their goal? That's the bit I'm actually struggling with is we're going to spend this money over 2 years and what are we going to get to? Are we just going to hear a lot of feedback on what a future economic development agency might look like? I'm just struggling.
This role is going to deliver you regional economic development. It's doing things as we work through to actually confirm proof of concept. So all the stakeholder discussions have said there are a whole lot of entities throughout Waikato already doing economic development, but they're doing it at different scales. What we're needing to provide is that regional view that allows people coming in, private investors, government investors, to get a regionally consistent view of what's needed in this region and how this region can actually add to New Zealand Inc. We need to be able to show that it works, and the success factors we have here for this role actually should deliver. And what we've crafted has actually been designed by the people we've been talking with over some months. And so it does meet stakeholder expectations. There is goodwill to make it work. And I think this is our opportunity to play a really useful part in an agile and pragmatic way for our region.
And pretty low cost, really,
So
in comparison to some of the other options.
If I'm understanding it right then, so we're going to end up with a framework at the end of it. And so my question will be then, where's regional council's role going forward in that piece? Is this something that we're going to be looking to continually fund in some sort of way? I mean, it sounds like you've already got a bit of an idea around an overall structure. It sounds like regional council is heavily involved, and that's part of my concern is I'm not overly sure how much of our gig it is. So
I would say we are an active participant, but certainly not a leader, because what we would be, as with all of our activities, sometimes we lead, sometimes we support, sometimes we convene. We have different roles depending on what's required. So where we might lead is actually facilitating the regional economic development strategy, which needs to be refreshed so that we can allocate responsibilities, the implementation plan, and how that might be funded. We wouldn't be funding all of these activities, but we certainly need to know who's doing what, when, and how, and then monitor and report on that implementation to others. We might also have an active role, and this is one thing that people think is really important for this council, And that's with respect to providing information and insights, something we already do, but this would be focused to support regional economic development. And of course, advocacy to Wellington is another role that is seen as fundamental to the regional council.
So I guess my last piece of the puzzle is also funding, and where that goes from here. Sounds like we're not going out to consultation. And I think that part of the puzzle is actually quite critical. I think, you know, you're hearing from various stakeholders, but I think it's really important to hear from our ratepayers and stuff like that. So from all stakeholders, if you like, just how much they want to see us involved, and just, you know, we had a funding mechanism. We don't have it in front of us now. What that might look like in the future, who knows? So it's looking at that piece of the puzzle as well.
And that was the intention of bringing that back for the next
The
long-term
next
plan.
LTP, yeah. So this is almost a bit of a, I don't want to say placeholder, because I think that's not the accurate term, but this is what keeps us involved in this, so that we can continue to have a place around that table, be a part of that regional conversation, and gear up to when being in the right place and having the right information for the next LTP. And that's where the ongoing decision around funding, if it's required, to happen.
Yeah. So this is your transition plan. You were considering something for your long-term plan. It hit a road bump, and this is the transition to get you through to the next long-term plan.
I think it's a really good question that Councillor Maher's asked. You know, is kind of what does success look like in funding this for this period of time. I think what we observe is there's a lot of players who think they are important in the region for economic development. It's trying to work out how do you bring them all together to actually create it. I mean, certainly, you know, we've got a regional spatial plan getting developed, which needs to be underpinned with a strong economic strategy. But we're seeing the government also starting to look regionally to do things like the regional deals and so on. I mean, if this was really well sorted, we'd probably say here it'd be easy. So I think it is that opportunity to try and knit the things in the region together from an economic development space and work out what is the umbrella that's needed. Is it something that this council needs to provide going forward in the future, or is it something separate to that?
I suppose in terms of the region's place in this conversation, I reflect on, you know, Mayor Petley talking about when Kinleith closure was announced. He made the comment that 40% of the workforce came from outside of his district. And I think that really speaks to why economic development is a regional issue, because it rarely contains itself to the confines of one particular district or city council. Councillor Hughes, Nicol, Downard, and Kneebone. Councillor.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Look, most of the points I had been raised by Warren, and Chris has covered in some of the other aspects. I just want to make sure at the end of the day that we've got a very clear objective of what we're trying to achieve. And I think the key for me is that we've got, as Chris has alluded to, we've got a number of these economic agencies around. There's a lot of money being invested in this sector at the moment. There is no coordination, and that's what I see our role as, but I don't see our role as being the primary funder. And encourage you, Karen, for going down this path, that you come up with a model, a funding model, which involves the whole of the business community, because they're the ones that benefit from this. We don't. To a very limited degree, we only benefit out of it. So I want to make sure that there is a robust and sustainable business model based on community contributions.
Thank you, Karen. I'm comfortable with this coming from the residual RDF. That's what it's for. At a lower pace that's been drawn down in the past as well. I've always got trepidation around the timelines, want everything to be done yesterday and go faster, so that remains. The main point I want to get across is, because I saw in your paperwork talking about the governance arrangements of this, and it triggered for me, I think this should not be a subset of councillors for the remainder of this training, but just to come to full council so that we can carry on this conversation from the last long-term plan to the next one and deliver towards that strategic direction holistically. And I want the accountability for this to sit really close to the elected members, because what we're talking about, where the funding might come from in future, if it is a targeted rate, we need to be able to sell that in 3 years' time. We need to be able to be held accountable to how things are progressing to that. And so if this role can also support us, as you say in here, to do that, that would be really, really helpful. But that's my reflections at this point. We certainly do need to do something to move this through the transition. That's my feedback.
Councillor Downard.
Yeah, I struggle with the timing, and I'm a bit different from you, Jennifer. I'm a little bit more steady than fast. And I'm not quite sure now that Te Waka is still in the picture and the amount of investment we put into them. And then when we did go through that process of finding out that they were going to close down and asking for data base out of them, and they wouldn't give us, I can see now because they're still alive. But that's the thing that I'm going to struggle with. I'd like this to be put off into the next annual plan, where we would have a little bit more time and information. We've still got 50,000 left in the pot to carry on what we did out of the last, from the long-term plan to this one, and just find out exactly what Te Waka's doing. I think times have changed. You know, Hamilton's one of the fastest growing cities in New Zealand. You know, I look at Taupō, we had the world 70.3 Ironman champs down there in November. We've got the Ironman again in March. You know, it's really humming. Christmas really hummed. I think with interest rates going down and, you know, people are travelling locally, I think we have got a little bit of time that we don't need to rush into this. To me, even though it's a nil impact on the rates, it's still 604,000 over the next 2 years, and I'd just like to give a little bit of breathing time for the new councillors that come in the new election, that they can decide in the annual plan whether this is a good thing for the next 3 years onwards.
Councillor Niebon.
Yeah, look, after all the conversations today, I'm quite comfortable. I don't think we should leave it another year, Kyle, and that's simply because it's a really long time. We consulted on the purpose for collecting this money when we originally collected it, and so to leave it sitting in the pot for another 12 months, I'm not convinced is a very responsible thing to do. We'd have to do some sort of consultation if we were to use it for something else, I think, wouldn't we? So because we've told the community that's what we're going to use it for. You know, I just think leaving it for 12 months it's just another whole year with no regional coordination. Yeah, not necessarily leadership, no real regional coordination going on. You know, so I think we should continue. Yeah.
Clarkson.
Yeah, I support persisting, because at the end of the day, there has to be a place that is recognised as being involved in coordination. Chris used the word coordination too, and facilitation for the region. And it's an obvious place to come because it's the Waikato Regional Council. And then on top of that, there is the reputational risk of us sitting here on our hands for a whole year waiting for the next annual plan. Or that is not a good signal for regional economic development. Thank you.
I just following on from that, I suppose it keeps us around the table, because we all know that we have been challenged as an entire region to speak collectively, and part of us participating in that collective voice is us actually being at the table to do that. So can I get, oh, sorry, Councillor Marr.
Yeah, just something's popped up, that's all. Just listening to Mikhail, is there $50,000 left in the budget as it sits today?
That $50,000 was part of the program to understand functional economic geographies, and then following on from that, we were going to work with the sectors in each of those areas. So it is actually earmarked for a particular purpose.
Okay, so it is part of possibly what's going forward. So what I would possibly like to support or articulate to council is what about, well, how's a level of comfort around 150,000 for 12 months? And then is there the ability, Janine, to readdress that after 12 months through any mechanisms? Understanding that there is that fund there.
So through the chair, that would then be, you'd only be able to get resource in for the 12-month period that you've got funding for, which may impact who you can find to do that. And then it would be having a subsequent conversation in the next annual plan.
I just me personally would probably feel more comfortable in committing to a shorter period and then looking at the outcomes that have come out of that period than approving all this lot for 2 years.
Great, thanks for that. We have talked about this a fair bit, so I am keen to get a straw poll unless there is something you desperately want to add. I can tell you do. Go.
Very brief. This is residual funding that we had already given away. We'd already allocated it to someone.
Yeah, we planned to in our
and then going
LTP.
through another process of consideration in 1 year's time. Come on, let's just get in there.
Straw poll, those in favor of, sorry, I'm not going to use that word. Those who are in agreement with this type of direction, because it is a straw poll. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, sorry, is that a 7? And I don't know, Tippa dropped off.
I didn't get a chance to speak before he cut us off, but if you're going to do it, you've got to do it properly.
I oppose, so I'm still here, Pamela.
Okay, great. Just wanted to check. So it was opposed here, right? 4 plus 5. All right. Great. We have got an indication on all of the various bits that add into the mix, right? Yep. So would you like to, do you want to show us now and then we have a tea break, or
Let's have a beer.
you want to have it?
Yeah, let them get their thoughts.
Okay, we're gonna adjourn. So it is not adjourn. Is that right? Oh, that is adjourn. Yes. Gosh, it is obviously. It's a slow restart to the year. So we'll adjourn for 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. We'll see you back here at 3:35.